Pot of Disparity has just been announced. What does it do? Let's find out. Dual sauce, extra sauce. Hit that subscribe. Hey everyone, this is Jesse from the Janjo Zone here for another extra sauce for some new Blazing Vortex card that has just been announced, and that is the brand new Pot card. That is Pot of Disparity. It has half the face of Pot of Extravagance and half the face of Pot of Generosity. And I always love that when they announce a new mishmash of these pot cards, they usually are pretty good, whether it's Pot of Avarice, or Pot of Greed, or Pot of Desires, Pot of Extravagance. They're usually really good in some way or another. They're usually a way for people to use them, and usually wind up being very expensive cards. So I'm actually kind of surprised we're getting one in this. I don't know, I feel like it wasn't that long ago when we got Extravagance. Maybe it's just me remembering wrong, perhaps? I don't know, but either way, here we are with Pot of Disparity. It's a normal spell, and let's read its effect. Wait, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't, because that helps me upload more videos and know that you like content like this. You cannot draw any cards with card effects during the turn you activate this card. Banish 3 or 6 cards from your extra deck face down, excavate that same number of cards from the top of your deck, add one of them to your hand, and place the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. For the rest of this turn after this card resolves, half any damage your opponent takes. You can only activate this card once per turn. Now, I was reading some people's comments on Twitter threads, and some people were thinking, this is really great. Some people were thinking, this is kind of crap. And from first glance, I think this is actually a really good card. I think there's a lot you can do with this, because let's kind of go step by step down its effects. The first part is that you cannot draw any cards with card effects during the turn activate this card. So this doesn't say you can't add from your deck to your hand, it just means you can't draw cards with card effects. So I can't think exactly what that would entail if, adding to your hand, like by excavating, would be considered that, or if it's just plain drawing, because otherwise there's not a ton of cards I can imagine, because most things just straight out search cards, so I don't see how this is a big downside for most decks. Obviously there are some decks that would not like this effect, but I feel like for the most part of it, it's not that bad, I would say. So its second part is banish 3 or 6 cards from extra deck face down. Now this is actually really cool, because unlike Pot of Extravagance, this effect doesn't say random. It just says banish 3 or 6. So in theory, if this doesn't get translated differently in English for the TCG release, is that you can banish whatever you want, and that is amazing, because that's one thing I hate about Pot of Desires or Pot of Extravagance, that you don't know what you're banishing, and sometimes that can really screw you over. Now, most decks running them don't really care that much for it, but some players do, and I think that the fact that you can decide which ones you banish is really amazing, and it really helps for late game when you can decide, okay, if I already gone through some cards in my extra deck, what other cards would I not want to go through? What other cards do I want to get rid of? Do I have enough to get rid of this? There's a lot of better decision making you can make with this card, and that's what I really like about it. So then it says, after you do that, excavate that same number of cards from the top of your deck and add one of them to your hand, and place the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. That second part doesn't really matter that much, because most of the time you'll probably be shuffling your deck anyway, and you're not going to be drawing, so what's it really matter to you? Except for kind of knowing, I could have drew into this Harpy's Feather Duster next turn, but whatever. I think it's really cool because it's not just plain drawing, you can excavate your card. So it's like a Pot of Duality, and I think that's really cool because most players are gonna wind up banishing 6 cards, so excavating 6 cards is a lot of cards. 3 cards is pretty good. I mean, it's like a dark magical circle thing. It's not. And Adamantipator is what they excavate, like 5 cards, but not 6. 6 is a lot of cards to find something that you want. So you can decide what you need in that situation, as opposed to randomly banishing 6 or randomly banishing 10 and then drawing 2 cards. This one, you have an option of which exact one you want, which exact one you need in that moment. And that is really, really powerful. because most of the time, maybe you're not going to need 2 cards. Maybe you draw into another pot card and that's useless for you. But this one, including its initial banishing effect, is a lot more optional for what cards you banish and what cards you draw. And I think that choice makes Pot of Disparity very, very powerful. Now for the rest of the turn after this card resolves, half any damage your opponent takes. And that's fine if you're running this turn 1, which most Yu-Gi-Oh games are really 3-turn games, then you're not going to matter too much. Sure, if you're going second, it's nice. You know, if you're having damage, if you want to set up a good board anyway, you have better strategies to try and stop your opponent. So it's not the worst effect. It's not the worst downside to have. And you can only activate it once per turn. That's perfectly fair. I cannot imagine this resolving 3 times. The only way to resolve it 3 times is if you would have to have banishing 3 cards for each of them. Actually, no, you could do 6, 6, and 3, and that's a lot of excavating right there. That is a lot of crap right there. But once per turn, again, I don't think there's any reason to use more once per turn, considering that if you excavate 6 cards, that's a lot of cards you're digging through your deck to get, and already that is really, really powerful. I'm really excited to see what decks use this. I do think this will be a solid card for many decks. I don't know if it will downright replace Pot of Extravagance. It certainly could. I mean, you could add this in a deck with Extravagance. Actually, no, you can't use this with Extravagance because you can't draw cards, and that would draw cards. This actually excavates and adds. That's kind of interesting that it has that. You know, I think I kind of get the effect. I think I know why they added this effect, because they don't want people just running all these draw cards. Wow. Boom, a light bulb just went off in my head. Wow, okay. So yeah, but it's still a very powerful card. You know, if the downside is that you can't use the other cards the other pot cards alongside of this, I definitely think this will be the replacement for an Extravagance or a Desires, because you get the choice of which cards to banish, and you get a chunk of choices of which card to add. Obviously, downside is listed in the card description, and the fact that you can only add 1 card and not 2, but considering that you can look at the cards and add which one you want, it's essentially a half-baked searcher card in a way, and that's crazy. Imagine using this and then saying, oh, here's my Elemental Hero Stratos, and that leads to more plays and crazier things. Like, things like that, just, it makes me unable to sleep at night, you know what I mean? So yeah, Blazing Vortex is really showing a lot of really cool cards for this. I definitely think this will be one of the big cards in terms of more generic cards, and definitely one of the cards people want to get. I'm interested in what the rarity will be. Most likely it's going to be a secret rare or something. All these cards are. It would be amazing if they actually made this some sort of common or like a super rare or something of a lower rarity, so more people are able to play these kinds of cards, because I still don't have any Extravagances, and every set now has Desires, but I mean, you know, Desires is kind of more mixed upon the player base, I feel like. This is definitely a card to look out for. I'm interested to see the rarity of this and how much it'll eventually go for, which will probably be a lot. I am certain of that. But yeah, so let me know what you think about Pot of Disparity. Do you think it's really powerful? Do you think you want to use it? And yeah, let me know any other thoughts, questions, comments, concerns. And until then, have a wonderful day.